So be content. Be content with nothing less than perfect peace. Now that could sound like a contradiction in terms, were it not for the fact that there are levels of contentment in awakening, culminating in absolute and perfect contentment. But that's not of this world. But we're blessed in that we can attain contentment in this lifetime. And that, in fact, is the goal of the course. We can attain contentment. We can attain that level of pure enjoyment and happiness and peace, because that is the goal of the course. And we come to that, even though it may be a transitory point where, through the grace of God, we'll be quickened to move on to higher realms, because that's the final step that God will take. But for now, our focus is to reach that point in this lifetime on this earth. Now we reach that and we come to contentment through devotion. Devotion to God, but essentially devotion to the will of God. Because the will of God is for our perfect happiness. And so our devotion is for our own happiness. No sacrifice there. But the kind of happiness I'm speaking of is not the kind of happiness that we're used to. The kind of happiness we're used to is a personal happiness that is very transitory. It's an emotional-based experience that is a very, very weak facsimile of the real thing. The real thing is impersonal. An impersonal happiness, which is the happiness of the self of all. That level of happiness is perfect. It's perfect because it's the will of God. And we come to that through devotion. When we come to that level of happiness, that's accompanied by true seeing. Seeing what really is here, all around us. The veil is lifted and we see through the eyes of Christ. What is truly amazing is that it's the same thing. And it doesn't sound like the same thing. It sounds like vision is something we see beyond ourselves, outside. And happiness is something we feel inside. But this is not a feeling. This is a state of mind. And the mind contains everything, including what we imagine to be outside. And that's why it's the same thing. The happiness is a continuum of what it is that's taking place within in what seems to be without. So what we're speaking of here is oneness, unity. And it's clearly understood and seen and experienced that this unity, this happiness that is in all things, we're not speaking about the optical now, what it is outside, but what it is that the mind can actually perceive. Because this is a state of true perception. And it goes beyond what it is that represents our horizon, if you like, through the body's eyes. We see everything as happy. So vision and inner happiness and contentment are all one unified experience. It's not omnipresence, but it's the step towards omnipresence. So that represents within us, in the mind, a complete and total freedom from fear. In the heart, absolute contentment. And in consciousness, perfect happiness. It's also the liberation that we come to when we're set free from all pain and suffering. And that liberation from all pain and suffering is a result of our devotion, And that is the devotion to our forgiveness of the world. But again, the kind of forgiveness I'm speaking of now, it is beyond the idea of forgiving this and forgiving that, and forgiving what upsets us and what offends us. It's the forgiveness of God. It's the forgiveness of the grievance that we have against God, which is the grievance that we have against life. And that grievance shows up in every kind of nuance of negativity that we experience, both within and without. To be free of that, to actually begin to forgive that, we have to have a continuum of forgiveness. It's the prayer unceasing of forgiveness, where we give everything that isn't congruent with the love and peace of God to the Holy One, to Him. It's an obsession with forgiveness. And that's the only way that we actually reach this level of freedom. To become obsessed, to make it our complete and total dedication. But it's in every moment. It's a continuum. It's not something we do now and again when the pressure's on. This is not about pressure. It's about aspiration, the aspiration to come home, to discover what it is that we've been speaking of, this world of peace and joy and happiness that is all around us. I'm not going to answer the phone. Well, this level of forgiveness brings us to true prayer. And like the forgiveness we're speaking of, it's totally devotional, which means that it's complete. It's free of the interruptions of the world and thought. And it comes about through stillness. That's the key. It's stillness that brings us into true prayer. And what stillness does for us, it allows us to see. It opens our eyes within to see what's taking place, to see what we're actually doing. Until that stillness comes and that seeing comes, we're blind. And we do things automatically. We make decisions. We're making thousands of decisions all the time without even giving any consideration to what they mean. It's almost unconscious, because it comes from our tendencies, the tendencies that have been developed over countless years of time. And so it all becomes automatic, and we're blind to what it is that we're deciding. Now, all this time that grace is always just simply pouring down on us, opening us up to the gifts of God, to true peace and joy and happiness. And that's unending. But we have a way of dealing with that when we're blind. We can use it. We can take it and we can use it for the needs and wants of the body. It's called the distortion of miracle impulses. And we do that blindly. We do it blindly because we can't see what we're doing until we're still. And when we're really, really still, we start to see the mistakes. And we can correct those mistakes. We can change our mind. And it doesn't require discipline or effort or even great intention. It just requires to see. And when we see what it is that we're doing, it's like walking down the street and you see dog muck. You don't step in it when you see it. You don't have to make a decision. oh, that's not a good idea. Because that's what actually happens when you see, when you open up to what it is that you're deciding within. It's not even a decision. It's just simply, you don't go down the route of pain and suffering and death. You go down the route of joy and peace and happiness, because that's the grace of God. And you accept it fully, without distortion. So seeing is being. And when we're seeing happiness, we're being happiness. And when we're being happiness, we're seeing happiness. Because that's all there is. The rest is an illusion that we subscribe to out of blindness. And it needn't be. First we forgive, and then we pray, and then we're healed. It's a beautiful formula. First we forgive. We allow ourselves to forgive completely, not partially, but we let go of the grievance that we have against life. And then when we've done that, we allow ourselves to be still. Be still and know that I am God. And it's then that we can come into the presence of God. And then we will truly understand what absolute contentment is. We can't speak of that because it's not an experience. We can't recapture it with the human mind, but we can know it. And when we know it, what we know is I and the Father are one. Why wait for heaven? Those who seek the light are merely needing light. I need light here to read this.
I can't read it.
This is a different kind of light. Okay. Why wait for heaven? Those who seek the light are merely covering their eyes. The light is in them now. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. Light is not of this world, yet you who bear the light in you are alien here as well. The light came with you from your native home and stayed with you because it is your own. It is the only thing that you bring with you from him who is your source. It shines in you because it lights your home and leads you back to where it came from, where you are at home. The peace of God is shining in you now, and from your heart extends around the world. It passes to each living thing and leaves a blessing with it that remains forever and forever. What it gives must be eternal. It removes all thoughts of the ephemeral and the valueless. It brings renewal to all tired hearts and lights all vision as it passes by. All of its gifts are given to everyone, and everyone unites in giving thanks to you who gives and you who have received. This shining in your mind reminds the world of what it has forgotten, and the world is restored to the memory of you as well. From you, salvation radiates with gifts beyond all measure, given and returned to you, the giver of the gift. The giver of the gift does God himself give thanks, and in his blessing does the light in you shine brighter, adding to the gifts you have to offer to the world. Amen. God bless you. Thank you for listening.